Hi, my name's Cameron MacDonald and welcome to Whisky Without the Guff, episode 4. This episode is all about Scotland, since all of the single malt Scotch whisky in the world is made in Scotland. It's a good time to talk something about Scotland. There's lots of positive feelings towards Scotland all over the world because hundreds of years ago lots of people emigrated from Scotland and established themselves as far away as New Zealand, Canada and the North End and everywhere else. So Scotland is generally looked upon favourably by people, even people who have never been there. If you haven't been there, I would urge you to consider it because it's a beautiful place. It's not perfect. They have something called midges, which are like little black flies that if there's no breeze in the morning first thing or last thing at night and you're in the country, they set about you and it's awful. You're scratching and bashing your head and everything. And in winter it's dark. Scotland's fairly far north, but it gets dark fairly early in the day, like 3:30 or something in the afternoon, and it gets light again about 10 in the morning or 9:30 or something. The opposite happens in summer. In summer you could almost argue it never gets dark. It gets a twilight, beautiful sunsets that go on till 11:30 at night, and it's light again at 3 in the morning. Extraordinary scenery, fast flowing rivers, granite, heather, lochs, streams, lovely clear water. If you like history, I mean, you know that there's castles and things there. There's a whole lot of history in Scotland. It's not just castles, even at the cities. You go to Edinburgh, there's all these little cobblestones and spiral staircases and turrets and closes, like an enclosed space going down hills and stuff like that. Lovely, lovely city. Same with Glasgow, but not with so much of the Baroque stuff. Glasgow is more of a Victorian. Glasgow's a little more like London in its architecture. Beautiful stone masonry work in all the buildings. The walls are like 3 feet thick, but beautifully done. Everyone different. It was built largely by merchants in the Victorian times. So lots of history, lots of culture, great culture. For whatever reason, most of the Scots have a really good sense of humour. The Scots have always had a very good sense of humour. It's almost like there's a Billy Connolly on every street corner and in every pub. Not with the talent of Mr. Connolly, but with the same sort of quick-witted, very creative, humorous, good-natured. They just love to laugh, the Scots, so I think you have a really nice time there. As an example, you know that people all over the world have a national flower, a national animal. Well, what do you think the Scottish version of these is? For a flower, it's a thistle. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a thistle. It's a nice looking thing, but it's a weed. And it's full of spikes and things. I mean, if you get close to a thistle, you'll be impaled. And as far as an animal's concerned, a lot of you are not going to believe this, but it's true. Look it up. The national animal of Scotland is a unicorn. Now, this is an animal that doesn't really exist. So you've got to imagine that, and this isn't something that came up in a pub with half a dozen crackpots that are drinking too much whiskey. This was some official kind of blessed thing. So if you look at an awful lot of heraldry and things, or if you're touring the castles, you'll see tapestries, unicorns everywhere. That's why. Lest I leave you with the wrong impression on this unicorn thing, it's not all just humour and drunkenness that decided this. If you go back to the mythology, the legend of unicorns was that they were always noble or strong, valiant. They didn't back down. They were hard to kill. They were just generally a very noble thing. And James II, King of Scotland, had an awful lot of respect for unicorns and thought that unicorns ought to be the symbol of the royal line in Scotland. So as a result of that, subsequent Scottish kings endorsed that, and it eventually became the national animal, despite the fact that it doesn't exist. Typical Scottish. So, great sense of humour. Also a very literate society, 99% literacy rate. They're generous, they're creative, they're gracious, they're very friendly. You'll get on like a house on fire in Scotland. In terms of culture, you have historically all kinds of famous authors. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the Sherlock Holmes author, Robert Louis Stevenson, Treasure Island, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Rabbie Burns, who, if you haven't, you've all heard of Rabbie Burns because he's the guy that wrote Auld Lang Syne, which people play at New Year's. And maybe the most famous of the lot, actually, in a background kind of way, is Walter Scott. Sir Walter Scott. Walter Scott wrote Ivanhoe. He wrote Rob Roy. He wrote The Lady of the Lake. Walter Scott probably is the first romantic novelist. For example, he used to go on holiday to Loch Katrine. Back then, and maybe still today, Loch Katrine supplies Glasgow's water supply. So it's over beside Loch Lomond, but the same latitude. But he wrote The Lady of the Lake about Loch Katrine. Now Schubert was so impressed by The Lady of the Lake that he wrote what's now called Ave Maria, but originally it was written to the words of Lady of the Lake. So you'll see statues of Sir Walter Scott in Edinburgh's Princes Street and in Glasgow's George's Square, which is the middle of both cities. So I also want to tell you, universities. So Scotland, there's a population of about 5.5 million. They've got 15 universities and other seats of higher learning in Scotland. Scotland's first university, St Andrews, was established in 1413, closely followed by Glasgow University in 1451 and Aberdeen in 1495. And education, higher education and all kinds of education has always been very, very important to the Scots, and you see the results of that in all of the things they're credited with inventing and writing and so on over the years. Alexander Graham Bell, who's invented the telephone, and he's claimed by both the US and by Canada, but he was Scottish. And there's a whole bunch of Scots that became famous over here, like Andrew Carnegie, Scottish. But macadam, tarmac, that was invented by a guy called Macadam hundreds of years ago. Kelvin, as in degrees Kelvin. If you go to Glasgow and you go to Glasgow University area, you'll go across the Kelvin Grove, the River Kelvin. If you get into the university itself, you'll see things about Kelvin. It's Maxwell's field equations, used to this day. Boyle's laws of thermodynamics, used to this day. The Scots created a whole bunch of very original sort of thinking stuff that's still in use. So St Andrews is the oldest university, and obviously that's also the seat of golf. Lots of golf courses in Scotland, all over the place, by the way, and a lot of them are very accessible. Now, because some of them, like St Andrews, are famous, you can't just roll up there and go, hi, I'd like a round of golf at any price. So it's a very interesting place, besides the whiskey. And it's a great place to visit. It's all, as I said, moors. It's a primal looking landscape, not just the landscape, things like Highland cattle. I don't know if you've been close to a cow. If you live in a city, probably not. But cows are very nosy things. But when you go up to a cow, it'll sort of run away, give you space. Not a Highland cow. These things they're beautiful looking. They're sort of rusty red coloured, long haired. They look like prehistoric. Big horns, and the cows. If you walk towards a Highland cow, I'll just look at you like, I think I'll gore you when you get close enough. And that's the cows. The bulls, God only knows what they're like. But, you know, that whole look, if you looked at the movie, one of the first or second ones of The Lord of the Rings, oftentimes they're up high and they're going across moorland with granite sticking through. I know that was filmed in New Zealand, but that's very much like Scotland. You also see it in things like Braveheart, where he's running around the tops of the hills. So beautiful scenery, wild, lonely place. It's a primal look, and everything about it, like the Highland cattle, the environment, the waterfalls, the stuff. It's a sort of complex place with personality and character, just like the whiskey itself. Anyway, it's a great place to visit, and if you go there, there's lots to do besides drinking whiskey, even though drinking whiskey is a great reason to go.